Things change.
Yes.
What was once 70.5 is now 72. And required minimum distributions focuses on that one word, required. It's only a 50% penalty if you don't take it out. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Grant Sullivan.
Happy to have you, Grant. Hey, if you look at this picture that we have that we're going to put on the board, and for those of you who are not watching this streamlined or listening to it on radio, I know you can't see it, but I always want people to know who's on the other end of the phone. And if you want to watch this, we're live 5 to 6 p.m. every Tuesday night. You can also watch it on our website at yourlifeafterwork.com. And, of course, you can always find us on the Financial Enhancement the Financial Enhancement book, Financial Tidbits page, if you want to. But I've circled Aaron. He's our Director of Financial Planning. He's the one that is manning the show, moderating, if you will, tonight. And I'm happy to have Grant with us as well tonight. And in Angie's absence, she is on vacation celebrating her birthday. This is part of the Financial Enhancement Group team that you're seeing on the screen. And like I said, Aaron is with us. So, Grant, what would you like to talk about tonight?
So with required minimum distributions, lots of questions, Joe. We get them coming in from families we care for who are hitting that age, and also others who are exploring what to do with RMDs when they do arrive. And the big one, Joe, is why do I have to take a required minimum distribution?
Yeah, that's probably the toughest part. I had to explain that. We're working on our book right now, and the people that are helping with it are younger. Right? They don't get it. And nor did you, nor did Darren, nor did anybody that I've ever hired, where I look at people and go, they won't take the money out. You know, y'all looked at me like I was idiots, and then years later it's kind of like, I guess he actually knew what he was talking about. The bottom line is there are three reasons why people don't want to take money out of accounts. And they may be the three reasons that you don't want to take money out of accounts. The first one, you spent 40 years putting money in. Pulling money out seems to be repugnant, repulsive, pick the R word, right? It just does not feel natural. The second one is you don't need it, right? You've already lived in a world of where you have lived with less. You've done the heavy lifting. That's why it's our job to do what we do now. And then the third is there's a fear of running out of money. And honestly, we don't run across a lot of people that have that fear. I mean, that's just not who really resonates with us. But it's out there, right? But those are the three pain points, if you will, of why people don't take money out of the accounts. Our job is to help you figure out how to get it out in the best possible way. But when it comes to required minimum distributions, and then Grant, I'm going to let you run with this, but you need to understand that your retirement dollars will exit. They can either exit by your own design, which is what we help you with. They can exit by the IRS's force, which is only a 50% penalty if you fail to comply, 50%. Or you can let your heirs settle it, right? And I believe in most people's, it's their best interest for them to design that plan. So if you want to do this on your own, that's your business. If you're looking for a fiduciary, that's Grant's business. That's our business at the Financial Enhancement Group. We're more than happy to help. So Grant, tell me what changed with required minimum distributions from the CARES Act to the Secure Act to where we are right now.
Ooh, a lot of changes, Joe. Well, I'll even go back to in the beginning of Secure Act when they were negotiating that. And I remember us talking around the table as planners, are they going to change it? What's it going to look like? The big one was from 70.5 to 72. And looking at the Secure Act, I remember us scratching our heads. What is the purpose of this? Why are we going here? Why are we delaying this? But when it comes down to it, sometimes you just don't know the answer, and you got to move forward with legislation. So big one, the change in age, which for some families it helped, right? Because it helped us, our team, do more important planning while we still had a favorable tax code. Right. That was huge. Going into CARES Act, the big one for last year, and we're getting a lot of questions coming into this year if we're going to repeat the same process. Again, we don't know at this point. But with CARES, the required minimum distribution, even if you had to start it and you turned 72 last year, 2020, you actually did not have to take your required minimum distribution.
So there's a delay.
Huge. A little, yes. Another year. They get another year to delay. But if you'd already been starting taking required minimum distributions, let's say you turned 70 and a half before legislation changed in the Secure Act, and you were still taking an RMD and you just missed that boat because you were a year too old, right? You still did not have to take your RMD last year because of CARES Act. So good legislation that helped families from a planning perspective in that way.
So the first part is we had a delay, right? So the second part, and what I would tell you is the most financially consequential in terms of this, is how your heirs have to take the money out. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so really when you look at the code, the tax code itself, there wasn't anything specifically written about what we call the stretch IRA. And Joe, essentially when we talk to families, and you did a great job teaching us this back in college as well, is when you pass on those deferred dollars to the next generation, they could take your required minimum distribution schedule over their lifetime, meaning that we can control taxation hitting their tax bracket, and we didn't have to take the money out all at once.
So I'm going to pause him because it's imperative. That's a big word. But it's imperative that you actually understand this, because every now and then I see a trust document that actually has this language in it. It shouldn't. That's a mistake, right? Not an attorney. Don't play one on radio or TV. I am an IRA expert, right? So I am somewhat qualified to talk about this. IRA planning does not belong in your trust document. So what used to happen is if Grant died prior, I'm older, so we'll go with me. I died, and I'm under 70 and a half. Under the previous rules, and Grant was the beneficiary, Grant could take the money out over his life expectancy. If I was over 70 and a half at the time, what we called the required beginning date, RBD, if I was over 70 and a half and I died, Grant had to take the money out over my life expectancy, which has always cracked me up. How can you have a life expectancy when you're already dead, right? But that's the way that it worked, right? That's all gone. Every bit of that is gone. And we continue to see trust documents come into our office where people have this, it's written that says, you're going to take it out based on these parameters. Folks, this is a nightmare. This is not what you want to leave your beneficiaries. It's not what you want in your planning. You need a different thing. And it's the reason why I am licensed to be a trustee. I want to be able to help people with this. We are corporate trustees. You can name the Financial Enhancement Group. If we accept that liability and that responsibility, both, then we can do that. So go back to you.
Yeah, and kind of continuing on that same vein, Joe, going back to the big change, with the Secure Act, we now have a limited distribution schedule. We have 10 years. So RMDs on a generational transfer of deferred wealth almost essentially doesn't exist because you can take it all in 1 year, over a period of 5 years, or all in a year over year for that 10-year period. It just has to come out by the 10th year after your day of death.
Yep. Has to be emptied. And that's true whether it's a Roth or whether it's a tax-deferred account. And so you've got to be very, very careful to make sure that the thought process here is solid.
Mm-hmm. And one question, Joe, that I do want to bring up with this as well is because we often see confusion here, is everyone, for the most part, understands that RMDs are required for traditional IRAs, traditional 401ks. But there is a required minimum distribution component for Roth. Mm-hmm. But it's in a Roth 401k. Can you walk people through why that?
Yeah, inside of a 401k, if you leave the money inside of the 401k, which is to a large degree, this is immaterial. If somebody has a 401k and dies, the administrator is going to force you to move the money to a Roth IRA 99% of the time, because they don't want to pay for the administration of a 401k for a deceased person. But if you're still alive and you've got a Roth 401k, you're going to take a required minimum distribution out of the Roth component. You are much better to move that to a self-directed IRA where you have no required minimum distributions. Remember, Roth is a tax code, right? Roth merely says, I'm going to pay taxes on the deposit so that I don't have to pay taxes on the distribution, including any growth that occurred on it. That can be inside of a defined contribution plan like a 401k or a 403b. It can be inside of an IRA. But what you don't want is have to take money out. The whole purpose, the whole reason that we walk people through that process of understanding how to accumulate money correctly when we talk about tax diversification is to be able to give you options. We don't know what the tax code is going to be. I mean, this week we're going to have a new president. We have no idea what the new tax code is going to look like. What I want to make sure is that you have options to be able to deploy your resources effectively.
Couldn't agree more, Joe.
There you go. Hey, you're listening to Consider This. I am your host, Joe Clark. Grant Sullivan sticking in with us tonight. Aaron is on the moderator, if you will, to be able to answer your questions if you're watching us live streaming. Here's the deal, folks. We're offering you a complimentary visit to be able to come in and see Grant or Aaron or anybody on our team. It's 90 minutes long. We're going to walk through the 5 critical elements that we think have the most financial impact on your life. And we're going to give you things to consider today, things you're going to want to consider in your future. And if we choose to partner together, we'll give you things that we'll do for you and we'll put it in writing. 800-928-4001.